Islam has never been a religion of peace. There may be some altruistic, airy-fairy notions early on in Muhammad's career, but he was never able to gain traction with those notions. The only way he could secure loyalty or a following was through violence. He was constantly offended when people refused him or stuck up for their human rights, or when they refused to submit to him. So he would chop, slice, dice, rape, enslave and execute in an attempt to gain control. Then he'd blame the victims for not surrendering. Sound familiar? And so the pattern of victimhood and violence was established with the so-called prophet, and right from the beginning. Allah and his messenger were not appealing to most people, and so began the cycle of, "You must submit to the religion of peace if you don't want us to be violent." After a dismal career of trying to convince people that his visions were real, and by the way, even Muhammad thought his visions were demonic to begin with, the so-called prophet, or the perfect example of humanity, was poisoned by a Jewish woman, and he died. He was extremely clever though, as he entrenched apostasy laws that meant if anyone were to leave or reject Islam, they would be killed. You see, on the whole, terror does work because most people don't actually want to lose their heads. They would rather live a peaceful life, even if it is a false peace enforced through misogyny, oppression and violence. Sound familiar? After he died, Islam began a conflict that endures to this day. The infantile dummy spit between Shias and Sunnis of who should succeed Muhammad has left a bloody trail throughout the history of Islam. Islam has not been peaceful, ever. The false facade of peace is established and enforced through the cruel and barbaric measures of Sharia law. Terror and fear are the main instruments in ensuring that women remain subjugated and minority groups remain oppressed. Muslims kill other Muslims over ideological differences. Muslims kill the rest of us because the Quran says we are infidels, kafir, pigs, apes or dogs. Islamic nations establish governments using Sharia law and keep order with threats of regressive and backward punishments if anyone dares to express freedom or stand up for their human rights. There is not one Islamic country where fear and terror is not used in an attempt to protect the otherwise weak and fragile ideology. Take out the threat of punishment and many Muslims would reject Islam in droves. Most Muslims in the West refuse to obey the explicitly violent commands of Allah and his messenger. There are a number of reasons for this. Many Muslims are not even aware of what the Quran actually commands them to do. Some are just plain ignorant, some are outright defiant. Others, however, are waiting, as the Quran commands, until their numbers are large enough to establish Sharia. Others quietly support violence, but don't carry it out themselves. But what is truly concerning for us is that an increasing number of Muslims are succumbing to what the media call mental health issues. What they really mean is that there are an increasing number of Muslims who are following the example of the so-called prophet exactly and striking terror into the hearts of unbelievers, striking at their necks and cutting off their fingertips, just as Surah 8:12 and many other passages command. Can the media, the Islamic leaders or our politicians predict who will be the next Muslim to literally obey the violent commands in the Quran? Can they assure us that they know which Muslims are susceptible to mental health issues? Can the leaders in our nation protect us from devout Muslims who want to emulate Muhammad? No, they can't. And therein lies the problem.